Hello students. Today we are going to record a play by Arthur Miller which is called Crucible. This play was first produced in 1953. Now you might feel like asking me the significance of this year. I'll tell you a little later. This play has close links with the Second World War. Do you know when the Second World War was fought?
1939 to 1945.
That's excellent. Immediately after the World War, the situation in America changed. But we will talk about all this in the background of the play. First, let us talk about drama as a genre. Have you all read some plays before?
Yes.
Could you tell me the name of a play?
All the World's a Stage.
That's good. I'm sure all of you know that drama is not read individually like a novel. It is enacted. So we say that drama is a social event. That means when you are reading the text, you must make your mind like the stage so that the play is enacted in your mind. Then the play makes real sense. Whenever we talk about drama, we mention the name of Aristotle. Have you heard of Aristotle?
Aristotle is a Greek philosopher.
That's very good. Aristotle spoke about the cleansing or purgatorial effect of drama. He says that drama cleanses the audience of pity and fear. Excess of these emotions are not good. So we see drama. Another point about drama is its universality. That means drama should not be limited by space or time. I already told you that this is an American drama. Are we not reading it?
We are reading.
We are not Americans, but we are reading it, which means that universal drama appeals to everyone. It appeals to all nations, all cultures. Then the temporal dimension. I already told you that this play was produced in 1953. Which year is this? This year is 2011. Therefore, we are not reading the play only because it is contemporary. We are reading it after a time. Universal drama is that drama which is available to all times and all spaces. Then we have to talk about the stage worthiness of drama. That means, does the drama have a theatrical impact? When it is enacted on stage, how does this play come about? Miller's Crucible is an extremely stage-worthy play. But this also we will talk about when we are analyzing this play. One more point which I would like to mention in this introduction is that this play was written as a rebellion against McCarthyism. You must remember this term, McCarthyism. I'll tell you a lot about it later. Miller was one of the victims of McCarthyism. So his play is a personal as well as a universal stance against McCarthyism. At this point, we will move on to the background of this play before we begin the play proper. Now let us do the background of American drama and the background of Miller as a dramatist. Then we will start the play proper. American drama began in the 1920s with a very famous name, Eugene O'Neill. Apart from O'Neill, there are some other important dramatists like Tennessee William or Edward Albee. These are all important American dramatists. Arthur Miller is also one of them. Initially, American drama was psychological in its orientation. Do you know what psychology means?
Study of the mind.
Wonderful. So, American drama in its early phases dealt with the mind and its aberrations, the way in which the human mind acts. Slowly, the drama became social and finally political. The play which we are going to read, do you remember its name?
Crucible.
Yes, but please say The Crucible. Now, this play is a political play. Therefore, we have to see that American drama has become politicized. Political events are used in American drama. Now, when we talk about the political dimension, we have to mention McCarthyism. Already I told you that I would talk about McCarthyism. Now I'm going to tell you about it. Are you eager to know about this?
Yes.
McCarthy was a senator. His name was McCarthy. And he had a committee which is called as the House Committee for Un-American Activities. The House Committee for Un-American Activities punished people, persecuted innocent people by saying that they were violating the values of America. Mainly, this was a time of the Cold War. So Americans who were capitalists mainly and who were living in a democracy hated communism or socialism. So anybody who had a communist agenda was caught by the House Committee under the leadership of Senator McCarthy, and they were punished. Miller, from his childhood, was much influenced by the ideals of communism. So he was also arrested and he was questioned. Then he was asked to name his friends, any others who were also communists. Miller was innocent. He hated this persecution. Therefore, he wanted to write a play. Exactly at this time, when he was thinking about writing the play, this happened in 1951, he came across a very significant book called The Devil at Massachusetts. This was written by an author, Marion Starkey. It was about the Salem witch trials of 1692. If you read American history, I'm sure you can go home and read some American history. You will know about this. I won't tell you much more about this. So he decided that he would use this event, this historical event, to explain what was happening in the 1950s after the Second World War. This was also a time when literature became important in America and the intellectual climate was very powerful. There was a creative upsurge after the Second World War. Miller belonged to this phase. So, using this creativity, this significance of literature, and the research which he did into the Salem trials of the 17th century, he started writing the play. Let us now talk about Miller's biography and the title of this play, The Crucible. Miller was born in 1915 in a Jewish family. In his house, he learnt values. He also had religious convictions. Then the Depression came. The year was 1929. The Depression brought changes in his public life and in his private life. He had to start earning even before he finished his schooling. Based on this Great Depression, he wrote his famous play called Death of a Salesman. This play was written in 1949. Now let us move on to the title of this play. Crucible is a small vessel. Miller calls this play a crucible because something is burning in the play. What is burning? One is the concept of the individual, and the other is the community. Both of them are burning because of these witch trials. Miller is using the past to talk about the present. This kind of a comparison is called in literature as an allegory. The allegorical implication of the crucible is this, that McCarthy was burning the American community by being unfair. He was using his power and authority to destroy the American community. He was punishing innocent people. That is one reason why the play is called The Crucible. He was burning, but the crucible was not breaking. The crucible is the American society, American culture. The other is that the crucible, in a positive connotation, helps to get self-knowledge. In the play, the protagonist is called Proctor, gets self-knowledge by being burnt in this crucible. That Miller himself suffered under McCarthyism. Then he wrote a beautiful play which has universal significance. Today also we have mass hysteria. Today also we have a similar situation of misuse of power. Such a universal play was created by Miller because he got self-knowledge by being persecuted by McCarthyism. Now we are going to do the plot of this play, The Crucible. The play is divided into 4 acts. The play begins in the house of one of the important characters whose name is Reverend Paris. He is the priest of this community of Puritans who live in Salem in the year 1692. He has a little daughter called Betty who is ill. She has fever. Now everybody wants to know what is the cause of this fever, because the local doctor cannot diagnose what is wrong with Betty. Therefore, they send for a specialist whose name is Reverend Hale. The moment they send for Reverend Hale, we can make out that the people believe there is some witchcraft involved, because he is a doctor for witchcraft. There is a servant in their house, an African-American servant, in the house of Reverend Paris, whose name is Tituba. They feel that it might be Tituba who has created this problem. The whole situation has arisen because all little children, including Betty, played in the forest. Then there is the niece of Reverend Paris, whose name is Abigail. Abigail also is a very important character, but she is a negative character. So we can call her as an antagonist, not as the protagonist. Abigail is also blamed by saying that she is the one who allowed the girls to play in the forest. She encouraged them. Now Abigail wants to defend herself. Therefore, she says that she did not do it. It is Tituba who did it. Important members of the community come to see Betty, and in them there is one character called Thomas Putnam. Thomas Putnam is a very greedy man. He wants to take away the property of other people and become rich. Therefore, what he does is, he says that there is witchcraft, and his wife, who has lost all her children, which she thinks due to witchcraft, they died in their childhood. She feels that Betty is ill because of witchcraft. Therefore, she says, immediately the devil should be found. Reverend Ferris, who's a priest, gets worried. And then he says that there is no devil in my house. Please do not blame me for fostering the devil. Now the protagonist, Proctor, is also introduced at this point of time. He had an illicit relationship with Abigail. In spite of having a wife called Elizabeth, he had a relationship with Abigail when she was working in their house. So we find that Proctor is feeling a little guilty, but he's also a very rational person. He says that illness is not due to the presence of the devil. The only rational voice in this whole scene is the voice of Rebecca. Rebecca is an elderly woman who has many grandchildren. So she says, children often fall ill. They are mischievous. They run around. They get fever. So don't get worried about it. But nobody is willing to listen to her. They are all eager to find the devil. So that is why the book which Miller had taken from was called as The Devil in Massachusetts. At this time, the Puritans believed that they were the chosen people of God, and their job was to eliminate the devil from society. The whole scene, scene 1, is full of speculations about the devil. Scene ends at a point where Hale comes and gets ready for interrogating the people of the community. He carries out many interrogations. The first one is Abigail. Now the dramatist gives us a rational reason for the trials. The trials will come in the Act 3. But at present, the rationale is there. Abigail thinks that to protect herself, to protect her reputation, she must be offensive. So while taking offense, she condemns all the people in the community as witches and sees that all of them are hanged. But this will happen in the last scene. Let us now go on to the second act. Now the scene shifts to the house of Proctor. We find that Proctor and his wife, Elizabeth, are talking to each other. There is a lot of misunderstanding between these two characters because Elizabeth knows that her husband has been disloyal. They have removed Abigail from service, and now they have a new maid called Mary Warren. As the husband and wife are talking to each other, Mary Warren comes in, and she starts describing what happened in the court that day. Mary Warren says that in the community, all the people were being condemned as witches on the testimony of Abigail and the girls. Abigail is leading all the young girls to describe these people as witches. And how they are doing it is that they are setting up a chant. As soon as a character comes in, they're saying, we can see the devil with this person. So all good women are being branded as witches. As Mary Warren finishes this description of the court, Reverend Hale comes in. Do you remember who's Reverend Hale?
He's a specialist.
He's a specialist who has been called for a particular reason. And the reason is to find the devil in Salem. So Reverend Hale comes in because he's interrogating people. Now he wants to interrogate Proctor and his wife because Abigail is saying that Elizabeth is a witch. He comes and says, you have to answer my questions. Elizabeth answers them very well. She recites the 10 Commandments beautifully. But Proctor cannot do that. Of course, because Elizabeth has recited all the commandments, Hale says there is no devil in your house. And he leaves. Suddenly, terrible news comes that two very good women, Rebecca and also her friend, these two women have been condemned as witches. At this point, Elizabeth tells Proctor that you must go and condemn this whole trial. You must expose Abigail. She's a terrible person and she's destroying the community. Proctor hesitates. He says, no, I don't want to go because it is only my verbal testimony. How can I prove that she is evil? I have no way to prove. At this point, they come to arrest Elizabeth. They say that you have a puppet. This puppet, which is in your house, which was given to her by Mary Warren, this puppet proves that you are a witch. The moment Elizabeth is arrested, Proctor feels terrible because it's his own wife now, not the wives of others. So he says, I'm going to go to court and denounce Abigail. And he decides to take Mary Warren to give some witness. This is where the second act ends. Now we move on to the third act of the play. The setting this time is the anteroom of the court. The trials are taking place in the court. Two important officers are holding these trials. One is Judge Hathorn, who will make the decision, and the other one who's prosecuting is Governor Danforth. These two men believe that it is their duty to cleanse the community of the devil, and they are using Abigail. And the person who's supporting her maximum is Thomas Putnam, because he feels that if many people die, he will be able to get their properties himself. So both of them are doing it from a negative perspective. Now we find that in the anteroom, all the husbands have collected who want to save their wives from death. Proctor comes and joins them. He has brought Mary Warren along because Mary can give testimony. Unfortunately, when Mary tries to give the testimony, Abigail raises her voice. She becomes hysterical. Mary's voice is very weak and Abigail has a strong voice. She has a group of girls who start behaving hysterically. And Abigail says that Proctor is a very evil man. At this point, Proctor calls Abigail a whore. A whore is a woman who has a bad character. When Abigail is abused like this, she again sets up a chant, a hysterical chant, saying that Proctor cannot be trusted because he doesn't go to church, he doesn't believe in religion, he doesn't support the community's religious activities. Proctor is very rational and he's a private person. He does not involve himself in the public affairs of the community. So this is seen as his crime. And since he is divorced from the community, Abigail gets an upper hand. We find that Abigail is now being heard with more conviction, with more trust. Proctor is not being heard at all. But they want proof. So they say that, can Proctor prove that Abigail is a whore? Who shall we ask? The best person to ask is the wife, because the wife will know. And Elizabeth also has the reputation of being very truthful. So Elizabeth is invited into court. Till now she was in prison, so she doesn't know what has happened. And she's asked, did your husband transgress the marriage vows? But Elizabeth decides at this crucial point to tell a lie because she wants to save her husband's reputation. So the first time in her life, she's telling a lie to show her loyalty towards her husband. Earlier, she was very cold and unforgiving. She punished her husband by being cruel. But the moment she says this, Proctor is condemned as a witch. Everybody starts shouting. They can see the devil around Proctor. Abigail starts blaming Proctor by saying, "Can you see? When he entered the court, the devil also entered with him." Proctor is condemned to die. But before the scene closes, Proctor makes a very powerful speech. This is one of the most important speeches in the play. He says that if you continue these illegal, unlawful trials, these irrational trials, the community will be destroyed. All individuals in the community will be destroyed. Now we come to the last act of this play. Here again, the setting has changed. We have moved to the prison. The condemned people are all kept in the prison because they will be hanged as soon as the sun rises. Everybody pleads with Danforth to defer the hanging. Danforth also needs some kind of a written confession so that he can prove that the devil is there in Salem. Nobody is willing to give him the confession. So Reverend Hale and Reverend Paris are expected to pray for the souls of these people who have been condemned. Danforth decides that he can ask Proctor for a confession. Elizabeth is not going to die immediately. She is expecting a child, so she will be allowed to live till the child is born. Hearing this, Proctor becomes weak. In this moment of weakness, Danforth takes advantage of him. He convinces Elizabeth to plead with him. At first, Elizabeth refuses. He says, "My husband is convinced that this trial is wrong, therefore he is not going to give a confession." But when they plead with her many times, she agrees to ask him. When Elizabeth comes and pleads with Proctor, Proctor immediately gives in because he has this desire to live a normal family life with his wife and child. He takes a piece of paper and he writes down. He says, "Yes, the devil was with me. He made me do all the wrong things, and therefore I brought evil to this community." The moment he signs this and gives, Rebecca objects to this. He says, "Proctor, are you not selling your soul? Are you not giving up your conscience? Handing over the conscience to somebody else, that is what. You're telling a lie, there is no devil." Hearing this, Danforth immediately says, not only Proctor is evil, but Rebecca is the accomplice of the devil. He says, "Take your confession and write down Rebecca's name also in it." Proctor becomes angry. He says, "You made me sell my soul. Now I cannot sell my soul condemning others." He takes the paper and he tears it into little bits. He says, "I prefer to die. I prefer to sacrifice my life." At this point, the action of the play ends. But the play doesn't end because there is an intrusion by the dramatist. At this point, the dramatist comes and says that the play ends on a note of hope because Elizabeth is going to get a child. 4 years later, Elizabeth gets married again. This is what they say. Then there is also 20 years later what happens. 20 years later, the government gives compensation to those who were killed or to the families of those who were killed or who were tortured. Then the jury gives a written apology. They say that we were wrong, we did a mistake. Therefore, the comment which Miller is making here is that when power is misused, realization doesn't come immediately. Realization came 20 years later that power was misused, that common people, innocent people were tortured. This is how the play ends. So the two levels at which the play works, one is the 17th century, 1692, and the other is the 20th century, McCarthyism. The comparison is there.